It pains me to make a video like this because, as I'm sure most of you know if you've been following the channel, that I'm a die-hard Bulls fan. And I try not to make Bulls-specific content on this channel because that's what I do on my channel, Bulls Central. And the goal of this channel is to appeal to a broader audience. But with everything going on with the Chicago Bulls, and yes, I do realize I'm recording this a little bit late after the win against Miami Heat, so some of this might not seem as relevant as a result of it just because they finally got a win. But the horrible start to this season, the disconnect between the players, the coaching staff, and even the direction of the front office and what they have done to structure this roster, I had to talk about it here because the situation in Chicago just keeps getting worse and worse, and I honestly don't see a way out of it outside of doing some major overhauls to the roster. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, and in return, I'll be providing NBA content like this all season long. And by the way, if you're a Bulls fan, first of all, I feel your pain, but if you're coming on this channel for the first time and you're a Bulls fan, you can feel free to check out my channel, Bulls Central. But either way, let's talk about this Bulls team. So obviously, a very disappointing and lackluster start to the season for the Chicago Bulls. And while granted, we knew the Bulls were going to be without Lonzo Ball to start the season, which is now likely going to be the whole season, which is a disaster in and of itself, and we knew the Bulls weren't going to be able to be as good without Lonzo. He's not a star level player, but he was so impactful on the court for the Bulls in terms of controlling the pace at which they play, the high-level perimeter defense, and of course, as well as their three-point shooting, as the Bulls desperately are in need of shooting. Like, yes, Lonzo makes a big difference to this Bulls team, and you saw the massive drop-off from this team last season after he got injured and never returned. But let's be real. Lonzo Ball alone is not solving the Chicago Bulls. Lonzo is not Michael Jordan. He's not a superstar level player that makes all the difference in the world for a given team. And even without Lonzo Ball, it's inexcusable for the Bulls to be playing as bad as they have been and trending towards being a lottery team this year after the expectations that were set by their front office over the offseason that they want to see a better result than last season, in which the Bulls got beaten badly in the first round of the playoffs in 5 games. With the level of talent that they have on their roster, you have DeMar DeRozan, Zach Lavine, Nikola Vucevic, and even complementary young pieces as well, it's unacceptable for the Bulls to be sitting where they are, 11th in the Eastern Conference. And it gets worse because the initial narrative was, well, they had the hardest schedule in the NBA, which was the case a couple weeks ago, and they were at least competing and remaining close in games, even against some of the better teams in the league. But more recently, they have been non-competitive, going against average teams in the NBA who are even shorthanded at times and getting blown out. So what's going on with this team that they are performing so grossly below expectations? Well, it starts with a little history. You see, the Bulls, after so many seasons with an incompetent front office of Gar Forman and John Paxson making terrible decisions and creating a toxic environment and culture for the Bulls organization, finally, they decided to make a change at the executive level in hiring Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley, both well-respected executives in the NBA, and they vouched to make a change to the Bulls franchise in bringing it back to relevancy. And while they took an initial season to assess the current state of the roster, by the trade deadline, they were already looking to make swift changes to the team when they traded for Nikola Vucevic, sending Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter, and 2 first-round picks to the Orlando Magic. The 2 first-round picks being top 4 protected, one that already conveyed in 2021 and the other coming up in 2023. The Bulls also made some other trades as well, getting Daniel Tice, Javonte Green, who's actually still with the team, and Troy Brown Jr. Those were more minor moves than anything. And then the Bulls went all out in the offseason going into free agency by signing Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan, both in the form of sign-in trades. One of the trades did include sending the Spurs a future first-round pick in 2025. That was for DeMar DeRozan, which again, that could prove to be a problem later on down the line. And of course, the Bulls also added Alex Caruso, getting him on a fairly team-friendly deal. So the message was clear then. And actually, the front office even reiterated this to the media last offseason. They're looking to win now. They want to win now. They want to build a contender in Chicago and bring the franchise back to relevancy. And with the focal point being around Zach Lavine. Zach Lavine was the player they wanted to build around. They traded Lauri Markkanen in a sign-and trade to the Cavs. They got Derrick Jones Jr. and a first-round pick out of it. They also traded Wendell Carter Jr. to the Magic, like I just mentioned, which I won't lie, I was actually fine with both of these moves at the time because neither of these guys were playing their best basketball for the Bulls and were looking like players who didn't have as much potential as the previous front office thought that they would. But the point is, the new front office, knowing that Zach Lavine's contract was coming up for an extension, knowing that he was going to be an unrestricted free agent, and knowing that if they didn't do anything to beef up this roster, they were going to lose him for nothing. Because he was getting tired of losing, and given he was older than the other guys that I just mentioned that were on the team in the peak of his prime, he wanted to start winning, and the front office did what they could to retain him by making all the moves they did over the last 18 months. And looking back, We know now that it was premature. They didn't need to move that quickly by going all in on the roster because, first of all, even with all the moves, it's not like the roster was a title contending team by any means, and it was incredibly risky to mortgage your future, trading 3 first-round picks for 2 aging stars in Vucevic and DeRozan. Don't get me wrong, I love both of those guys, and DeRozan in particular was a huge piece to the Bulls' success last season, getting selected as an all-star starter, second-team All-NBA player. He was hitting big-time clutch shots, but the fact of the matter is, you went all in on 2 guys who were on the wrong side of 30 and could easily be starting to decline. And you're already seeing that with Vucevic. Vucevic, although is still a solid player, he's not the all-star level player the Bulls traded for and likely never will again, given he's 32 and just looks more and more slow out there every passing game. And then most importantly, and I haven't even said this on my Bulls channel yet, the biggest mistake in all of this is that the new front office should not have prioritized building the franchise around Zach Lavine. I'm not saying they should have built it around Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. instead, because I don't see those guys as franchise level players either in the future. I know Markkanen is balling out in Utah, but I need to see sustained success before I think that he's a future franchise player. But Zach Lavine, no, he's not it. He's just not that guy. And I had been saying it for a while on the channel dating to 2 years ago, and I got a lot of flack for it, that Lavine, while yes, is an incredible talent, he's an all-star in the NBA, he's insanely gifted with his scoring ability using his athleticism, there is a lot to like about Zach Lavine. But you can't sit there with a straight face and tell me that this guy is a #1 option on a contending team or a player that you build your franchise around. I think he would be a great #2 or #3 option, a player that really complements a contending team, but he's not the go-to guy. And it's for a few reasons. One, Zach, as talented as he is, has never been a good decision maker on the court. Let me take that back. It's not that he's never been a good decision maker, but more so that even as he's aged, gotten more experience in the league, he's still making the same type of rookie mistakes and bad plays and doing so consistently without showing any signs of improvement on that front over the last few seasons. You can call it not being a high IQ level player, not being smart on the court, whatever it is, he hasn't improved that aspect of his game that you usually see from veterans with experience over time in the NBA. Second, he's not a leader. I hate to say it, but Zach Lavine is not a leader. He's not making his teammates better. He's not guiding, motivating, inspiring the players on his team that you would see from a leader on your roster. He's, not all the time, but sometimes doesn't play for his team. He's not the guy that's sacrificing and playing for others, but rather playing for himself when he's taking ill-advised shots with 18 seconds left on a shot clock in a game where they're ahead with little time left in the game. Or turning the ball over at critical times because he's trying to do too much and getting to the basket because he hasn't scored in a while. He's not a leader, and I think this team knows that. The coaching staff is now starting to see it, and it's causing frustration and tension in the locker room, which really brings me to my point in the most recent report coming out from The Athletic from Darnell Mayberry, who covers the Bulls. Now, I've had Darnell Mayberry on my Bulls channel, and he's one of the more trusted and credible sources on the Bulls beat, and while sure most of what was reported in that article regarding the tension among the Bulls locker room wasn't really anything new or revolutionary because we kind of expected this likely to be the case based on how the season was going, the difference though now is it is coming out and being confirmed that there is tension among Zach Lavine and the Bulls front office not seeing eye to eye. There was also talk about the Bulls questioning whether Billy Donovan is the right head coach for the job, especially after it came out that there was this secret extension the Bulls gave Billy Donovan over the offseason, which was weird in and of itself, that it didn't come out until a few weeks into the season, after the Bulls already started sucking, that Donovan was given this extension, which was completely unnecessary and unwarranted to give him an extension that early in his contract, when he really hadn't proven much given the collapse of the Bulls' end of season last year. But either way, it was reported that the Bulls have been questioning Billy's coaching, and it's been pretty clear the start of the season, just based on the body language and demeanor of the players, that Billy's kind of losing the locker room. While last season and the season before that, you could tell the players had a ton of respect for Billy. You don't get the same sort of vibes so far this season. So look, when we talk about what is going on with this team, why they have been so bad for a team that made all of these win now moves, really, it starts with the personnel, the fit among the roster, and the fact that the team chemistry has been shot as guys aren't getting along in the way that they used to, more specifically getting frustrated with Zach Lavine. Because the team on paper, they have talent. Not saying it's a contending team on paper, but a roster that should be in the middle tier of the Eastern Conference in the 4 to 6 seed range, not 11th in the East. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how talented your roster is. It doesn't matter if you have a good group of guys, of young up-and-coming players, older experienced veterans, star-level players that you can rely upon in the clutch, none of that matters if the guys don't play for each other. If they play selfish basketball, if they don't care to give maximum effort on the court because they're seeing other guys only playing for themselves, and if they just straight up don't like each other or the direction of this franchise as a result they don't like, yeah, you're not going to win many games. It doesn't matter how much talent you have on your team. If you don't work well together as a collective unit, as a cohesive team, you're not going to be a good basketball squad. And that's honestly what has happened with the Chicago Bulls. Don't get me wrong, there are a host of other issues with this team. They don't have shooting, which the front office did absolutely nothing to address in the offseason. They don't have good enough rim protection. The fit overall in the team isn't great. There are a lot of actual mechanical things on the court going wrong with this group. But the biggest issue right now is their lack of team chemistry, the lack of trust in each other, the lack of leadership on the team, and the fact that they now don't have a ton of faith and confidence in the coaching staff. So where do the Bulls go from here? I honestly don't even know. I said just a few weeks ago, it makes zero sense for the Bulls to blow it up because they don't have their pick. It's too early in the season. They'll eventually get it together. But it's becoming more and more clear this team is probably done and just aren't going to work. So drastic changes do need to be made, which means everything and everyone is on the table, including trading their big three and completely starting fresh. Not a fan of that direction, and hopefully, after the win against Miami the other night, even though it was against a short-handed Heat team, that things start trending in the right direction. But it's not like the current direction is really positive to begin with. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.